Hi everyone, I'm here with this week's happiness strategy. This week the theme is all around how we stay connected to our inner knowing or our inner spirit. And this week I wanted to share the 3 practices that I use regularly every day to help me sustain a lasting connection with my inner knowing. And I use the term inner knowing or inner spirit interchangeably. I believe that we all have an inner spirit, being that we are spiritual beings. There's so much more going on beyond the thoughts and the inner dialogue that we have. We are all so much more than that, and we are connected through our humanity. And I believe when we stay connected to our inner truth and our inner being and that place that's underneath and that's so much more than our inner dialogue and our thoughts, that we help to stay connected to other people around us and we spread that out. And I believe the same is also true when we go about life, our day-to-day lives, feeling disconnected from our truth or feeling disconnected from our inner knowing. We are really disconnecting from one another. And the way to come back home to each other is to really begin coming, back home to ourselves and to strengthen that inner bond and that relationship that we have with ourselves. And so that's kind of what we're talking about here today. I have written an article that goes into a little bit more detail about this, and I will include the link underneath in the description of this video. But for today, I just wanted to share the 3 practices and strategies that I use to stay connected and to sustain that sort of lasting connection to my inner knowing. Because while, I do believe the first way we can know if we are connected or we aren't connected is by how we feel. Our feelings give us so much information, and they're the real indicator for how connected we are or how disconnected we are. Because when we are connected to our inner truth, and our inner knowing, there's a feeling of inner peace that we experience. There's a lack of fear and judgment, and we're left with a feeling of relief and a feeling of peace and a feeling of gratitude, and just this overall sense that no matter what might be happening around us or happening in the world, that there is a divine plan and that all is well. And I do believe we get that when we're connected to our inner spirit and our inner knowing. And we can tell when we're disconnected from our inner knowing by our feelings as well. We might feel overwhelmed, or we might have really busy thoughts and stories running through our mind, and they feel out of control. We might feel worried or anxious, or lonely, and we might be overcome with a sense that of doom and gloom, that all isn't well in the world. And this can also be our indicator of how connected we are. So if we're having those sorts of feelings, I believe it's an indication that we need to connect inward and to really foster that connection that we have with our inner knowing and our inner spirit. So this week, the 3 practices that I do use on a regular basis that I do describe in the article attached below, and I'd like to talk about today is the first one is the idea that patience is a virtue, and just using that as a guide. That is a well-known expression for a reason, and I think we do live in a society where we expect and insist on instant results and instant gratification. And and when we translate this over to connecting inward and to really just being accountable too, I do believe that comes with connecting inward, like turning off autopilot and becoming more accountable for your own happiness. To wake up each day with the decision that you want to feel good. Now, it doesn't mean that you're going to be in control of how life unfolds around you, but appointing yourself in charge of your happiness and being accountable empowers you to react and to move with life and to show up each day and each from a moment to moment basis, from a more awake kind of way and a more connected way, so that you're not just allowing your inner dialogue and stories to kind of get the best of you, that you're kind of feeling more grounded, and it does make it more likely that you're going to experience a feeling of more peace and more joy, and just feeling a sense of relief and happiness throughout the day. So the idea with patience is to let go of the notion that, this practice of strengthening our inner spirit and our inner connection, or our connection, to our inner spirit, that it is something that we're going to achieve in a day, or that it's something that we can sustain all day long. I think there's just so much coming at us all the time that it's easy to get knocked off our path. And so being patient with the process really does go a long way. And it also enables us and empowers us to get to know ourselves and understand ourselves a little bit better, and to get to know what the ways are that work for us to connect inwards. Because what's going to work for me isn't what's going to work for you or for, the people around you. I do believe that we all have shared humanity, and that's something we all have in common, that having an inner spirit and being that we are all human beings. But how we access our humanness is really individualized based on our own preferences and what's going to work well for us. So what I mean by this is, like when you notice your feelings coming up, whether they're good or whether they don't feel so good, you can use those as cues to venture inwards and strengthen that relationship, or just to even connect inwards to your inner truth and that inner knowing, and that place that is it's going to tell you that you're okay and that everything is okay, because that is the truth. And so how you access that is going to be individual to you, but you have to get to know and learn and understand what those ways are. For me, I know that deep intentional breathing helps me remove stories around fear and worry. And that hasn't come easily or without a lot of practice, and it doesn't work every single time. But I know that it's generally a way where I can quiet my mind and quiet, the feelings and the stories around me that don't feel good, and I can access that inner guide and that sort of warmth within me to kind of just reset and get grounded. The same is true for around feeling stories of judgment, whether I'm judging myself or judging somebody else, like getting in those patterns. They don't feel good. I don't feel good when I'm in those patterns. And so I know for me, a way out of that is through gratitude. And I have some really particular practices around gratitude that I use that probably wouldn't work for you. And so being patient with ourselves really is all about getting to understand ourselves and to learn about what practices work well for us, and to sort of approach the idea of life as being a practice and a journey, and appointing yourself as accountable, knowing that it isn't going to that staying connected to your inner knowing, or like connecting there with ease, isn't going to happen overnight. Like, it definitely is a process, but signing on to the process is so much better than just saying, forget it, this isn't for me, I'm just going to go back on autopilot, and life is happening to me, like I have no say in the matter. So just being patient with yourself is I believe is the foundation to really sustaining a lasting connection with your inner knowing. So that's sort of the first step. Now, the next practice or reminder that I use on a very regular basis is around compassion. I do think that compassion is an underestimated superpower, and that, when we approach ourselves or other people with compassion, it kind of does remove the judgment and stories and fear and misunderstanding. And the more that we do also connect inward and see our truth and understand our truth and really embrace who we are, the more protective we become of ourselves. And so when there are outside external sources and people in our environments that maybe judge us or that don't understand us or that hurt us, instead of our knee-jerk reaction, which so many of us have, and we all can go there, and I know I certainly can and do too, the knee-jerk reaction when somebody hurts us or misunderstands us can be sort of one of retaliation, of the saying that hurt people. And instead of arming ourselves with that sort of retaliation mode, what we can do instead is to wrap our arms around ourselves and to really give compassion to ourselves and to offer that out to other people. If we are feeling hurt, like to not, it's okay to have those feelings and to feel those feelings, to end the cycle, because when we're hurting other people or judging other people or fearing other people, we're disconnected from ourselves. And so in order to sustain that connection with ourselves, compassion really does go a long way in that. And so offering compassion to ourselves on a regular basis and owning the idea that, having faith in our merit as a human being, like believing in ourselves, as cliche as that sound, really does go a long way. And anything that kind of, because things are going to be coming at us all the time, different stories and external, just even in tabloids, just what we're supposed to be like, just all this information coming at us all the time can kind of knock us off and sort of begin to sort of sever that connection that we have with ourselves. And so offering ourselves that sense of compassion and telling ourselves and treating ourselves with compassion allows us to feel safe and to feel safe in our enoughness. And then we end up offering that out to the other people around us by not reacting or by turning inwards rather than attacking outwards. And so I do think that this goes a long way too, and that other people will feel it around us. And the more of us that do begin being more accountable for our happiness and make our relationship and our connection with our inner knowing and our inner selves be like a top priority, I believe when more of us do this, it's going to spread out in the world more, and it's going to be something that we just automatically teach our children, and more will perpetuate more. Because if I'm happy and I'm not looking to you to fulfill my happiness, then I can spread more happiness, and the same is true for you. And so if we all show up that way, just accountable for how we are in the world, and to turn inwards for that source of fulfillment and that feeling of okayness, then I just believe that we're going to spread it out in a more empowering way into the world. And so the third practice for today, after really just practicing patience, being patient with yourself, and offering yourself compassion on a moment-to-moment, day-to-day basis, is also to give yourself some quiet space. And by quiet space, I don't mean that stereotypical, because that isn't always realistic in our environments and our day-to-day life, but to, again, find those individualistic sort of ways and patterns and practices where you can access more quiet space. So it might be like turning off your phone and giving yourself a daily break from technology. I do believe we all should be doing this, so that we're not so inundated with all of the external noise, and to set that sort of tone and environment so that we can begin even like sifting through all the inner dialogue and begin to become familiar with what our inner truth sounds like. And so it's easier to access that place when you aren't like feeling like you're sifting through a big pile of hay, or for a needle in a haystack. If you don't really know what that inner voice and inner truth sounds like, because you're constantly inundated with external noise from your environment, and just what you're exposing yourself to, it's definitely becomes harder when you don't really know what you're looking for. So making it a practice to create regular quiet space in your day. Like, you can definitely give yourself 10 minutes. There's a lot of hours in the day, and making that commitment to yourself, and that priority, I do believe it is a good priority to make, to give yourself the regular daily allotment of time where you're just experiencing quiet space. Now, that could even mean turning on some music and dancing and quieting, or whatever that might be, maybe connecting out in nature to quiet the noise in your mind, so that you can hear that inner truth. So quiet space doesn't necessarily look like the stereotypical quiet space, but it's just eliminating the external noise and external factors that can kind of get in the way of experiencing your inner truth and hearing that inner knowing and inner guide. So those are the 3 practices: patience, compassion, and accessing quiet space. And just, again, making it a regular practice, and knowing and not aiming for perfection, just knowing that this is a journey and an adventure and a life practice, and that no matter who you are, sustaining a lasting connection with your inner knowing is, it's going to be challenging, and you're going to get knocked off. But just having some, a big toolbox of ways where you can, that you can use in order to get back on your path and to connect back into that, into your inner truth, and to guide your life from that place. It just feels so much better to do that. So I invite everybody to try this on, this week, and to also, if you want a little bit more detail around this, to check out my article called How to Sustain a Lasting Connection with Your Inner Knowing. The link will be in the comments here below. So I hope you have an amazing week, and whatever you get up to, I invite you just to make that commitment and give that gift to yourself of really making yourself a priority, and that relationship that you have with yourself a priority. I think when more of us make ourselves a priority, we can show up in our relationships a lot differently too, and offer that out to the other people around us from a more grounded and happy place, and that is definitely contagious. So I hope you have an amazing week, and I look forward to connecting again soon. Thank you.